Would now like to just open it up to all the speakers of this panel to see if you have questions and comments for each other. We all notice a whole lot of intersections, also some differences, and perhaps we can see what it would be to have a conversation among the panelists right now. Thank you.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Absolutely, please do, Homa.
Yeah, so my question is of Haneen and Wala. Are there instances of this kind of colonial queerphobic queering in the Israeli discourses as well about Palestinians? Or is it just an Indian phenomenon?
I actually wanted to pick up on the same point, so I'm happy you brought it up, Homa. Thank you so much for this presentation. And definitely a lot of intersections to the Palestine context. So when you were talking about what you call colonial transing, right? And the Kashmiri Muslim and the kind of how, you know, death also becomes a moment of emasculation of the other, right? And I remember, I cannot help but remember an incident that happened a while ago, the death of a Palestinian child, Muhammad Abu Khdeir, and this is where Haneen can pick up on this as well, because it was something that we also discussed together during the summer of 2015, 2014, probably more, to be more accurate, where the death of the child, the Palestinian child, becomes a moment to, and it gets picked up, and not just by the kind of the nationalist Zionist camp, right? And that's also probably another question to you, whether it's only Hindu nationalism that plays a part in this, but also how much the kind of liberal, so-called quote-unquote liberal Zionist left as well, uses that as another moment to kind of reinvent the image of Muhammad, and becomes, you know, this is a gay child who has been killed by his parents because of homophobia, rather than burnt by settlers in Jerusalem. And this is where the question of the indigeneity and genocide, but also liberalism and democracy, right? Because there is a lot on the international arena that do believe that there is this gay side, democratic side to Israel, right? That is attractive, and that is somehow undeniable. And so it was that moment actually, it's revealing in the fact that it's not just the hardcore, you know, nationalist Zionists who are perpetuating genocide by virtue of pinkwashing, you know, the usage of the image of the native other as always already gay and always already being killed by their culture of homophobia, but also quote unquote, you know, the only democracy in the Middle East. Haneen, do you want to, because we had the conversation during the summer, and Haneen got engaged also directly in that incident. So I'm sure you have more to add to this.
Yeah, just like also the position that the queer movement was in, right? It was like an incident that burned the streets of Jerusalem. I live in the same neighborhood that were burned for like weeks after this incident. And like the idea that you take his parents, who's like worried, not knowing anything, accusing them for the killing of their kid, right? And then calling the queer movement, asking if the kid is queer, right? And that's like situation of like, and I can't remember where I was exactly, but I wasn't in my office and I wasn't in a thing. And I said, you know what? I don't know him. Just like to give the no and just like let it be, because like I felt also like in a way dealing with a position I never found myself in, right? And maybe continue for this. And Homa, thank you for your presentation. It's just a new thing that we discovered that the Israeli intelligence forces are doing newly with new refugees, Palestinian queer refugees who move or run away from their families to areas like Tel Aviv, right? And like and I hope you all can know that this fantasy of refugee and being asylum is like it's in the law, you cannot do it, right? And what was interesting, the new kind of easy way that the intelligence forces is dealing with these cases, right? And how much they are giving permits for young people to stay inside Israel under their queerness, right? But what we noticed is that they call the families after, right? And basically, in a way, close that road back. Right? It's not that like they tell things, really personal things that the kid shared in the interview, right? It's not an interview, it's an intelligence forces kind of an investigation, right? And we could see how even when most of these kids are not still questioning their sexuality, right? They're running from this like violence, right? And taking their queerness and taking it back to where they run from and intervening there, right? And I think it's all the time, in a way, closing that window of like coming back to your family, the hope of like something, also like, closing the way for the families, because they are like saying that your kid is a collaborator by that's it, right? And I think that's like one example how the Israeli pinkwashing is upgrading itself and changing its forms, right? And like really understood how the family and society is really part of like enhancing that violence in a way. So that reminded me of like something we newly like trying also to explore and how we as a queer movement also respond to.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And the incident about the young child Muhammad that you described, it's like an act of colonial queering of the child, precisely to activate pinkwashing on all of the Palestinian people, right? On his family and then all of Palestinians. Yes. So and I think really this is the way the right-wing discourse and the left liberal colonial discourse works hand in hand to further an occupation.
Yeah, they definitely do collide. And the native child is, by virtue of that, is always already queered, right?
Exactly.
We talk about Israel's demographic bomb. Palestinians are seen as a bomb, as a threat. So by virtue of reproducing, you are already a threat to that colonial machine that wants to displace and eliminate you. And that in itself is as you say, definitely a queering of the native other.
Yeah, yeah. So back in 2013, Paula, you'll remember, Sandeep, you'll remember, I wrote an article and did presentations on the colonial queering of Kamran Yusuf, that student who committed suicide in Hyderabad University, article by Ashley Tellis and the other woman academic whose name is slipping me by, but who was giving a job talk at Berkeley earlier on, where they colonially queer him in an act to then unleash pinkwashing on entire Kashmiri occupied people. That a Kashmiri student who had been tortured by the Indian police and committed suicide the next that following night. The argument of these two Indian academics was that, well, he is gay and he was not able to, he's killed as much by Kashmiris as by Indians because he was not able to be out and in Kashmir. He was not out anywhere. But this assertion, again, first of the colonial querying, then of pinkwashing, it works in tandem from these colonial academics. So, and it's interesting how the strategies are really similar in the Israeli context as in the Indian context. So it's not just the bombs and the missiles that are shared between those two countries. It's also discursive strategies that are shared, and they learn from each other. And Ines, I had a question for you as well, Ines. I can't see Ines. Is Ines there? Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes. I just love the idea of Mugword's the queer magical cabin. And how long has it been there, and is there a board that governs it? I hope to see it replicated all over the world, and especially in indigenous lands where we're fighting against settler colonialism and occupations. This is such a cool role model.
Thank you so much for the question. And thank you everyone for everything you shared, for very powerful presentations and knowledge shared. So this little project of the cabin has been around for about 4 years. And it's been about 2 years since we've been really trying to figure out how to legally collectivize, because it's actually kind of difficult to collectively own something. They always want you to either be a corporation or have someone's name attached to it. So part of our process has been really like, where are the gaps in current systems around land ownership? What places can we kind of make obsolete by opening up privatization? So examples would be, if we put this easements on this land, they'll stay with the land forever, right? So we could say, indigenous people always have access to this land. And also by actually literally transferring the deed, that allows a tiny seed to start creating a little bit of wealth for the land trust also, who right now doesn't actually legally own land like that. So we have a board of about 7 people, and we are officially a nonprofit, unincorporated association is our legal format. Yeah.
Sounds amazing.
Thank you.
Did any others have questions for each other? Or comments? Okay, so if not, I wanted to actually just ask if, in a short talk, it's not really always possible to elaborate everything. The situations are so complex, and we have just one sort of, problematic that we're all dealing with, which is queers combating settler colonialism. So I was wondering if folks could maybe elaborate a little bit on what queer people in the struggles against colonialism are actually bringing to these struggles, and vice versa. Just in terms of, for example, analyses, in terms of how, practices, art, anything.
I can maybe start. I'm sorry, I can't seem to mute my notifications. But just like thinking about your question, and like I don't know if you know, but I lived like 20 years in like the queer movement as an organizer, like, and moved to be an activist and not the director. And through that like leadership transition, that we were lucky enough and fortunate enough to have a lot of like knowledge to make it a collective political kind of intervention, in which we as a group discovered how like the praxis of al-Qaws as an anti-colonial praxis suddenly was seen as a practical model of organizing, right? And we could see like a lot of new feminist, like youth feminist like groups who's like taking the streets using the anti-colonial feminist and like hint to queer kind of analysis. It's just like, it's not about the analysis is not new, and the discourse is not new, right? But like the ability to really be able to implement it, and without any compromise, and also achieve some kind of deep change also inside the queer movement and outside the queer movement, and in the relationship between these two like groups. And I think that was like the symbolic kind of power that we saw, that like, I think for us as like queer activists who didn't have a minute sometimes to look from the outside and seeing this as a political model, as a successful political queer kind of organizing that could be adopted. Maybe it could be giving some hope to other groups inside Palestine. Huma, you said that, but like, we are dying. We don't have any time to just like, too much think. We need to do, right? We need to do a lot all the time because nothing in favor of us. And I think that's like, I thought to share here, and it's recent and like kind of still warm in my heart. And I thought it's could be a good example.
Yeah. So in the case of Kashmir, I think the queer organizing has gone underground post August 5th, 2019. It was emerging before that, and it's gone underground. But in the longer picture, from poetry, from Agha Shahid Ali, who is considered a poet laureate for Kashmiri people in English, your friend Paula was queer, and he wrote poetry about that as well. And so his poetry permeates the freedom movement, especially in the English language. And then there, from slogans coined by our trans sisters. So there's another very popular slogan, "Ragda, ragda, de ragda." So rub it down, India. Let's just rub this occupation out of existence. Was coined by a trans sister of ours, and they are she's considered a heroine in the community, in the freedom movement. And I think that also has allowed the Kashmiri patriarchy to look at itself, to be sensitive, to be more self-reflective about its about patriarchy, about misogyny, about queerphobia, when there are stalwarts in the freedom movement who are queer, and vice versa. So there is a lot of give and take, feedback between, and as we know, these things don't exist in vacuum. Queer freedom does not exist in separation and complete isolation from Kashmiri freedom. They're intertwined. So we can't really disentangle them in either direction. But yeah, that was an excellent question. It does work in both directions in complicated ways.
So Ines and Wala, did you want to say a few words? We are coming close to the end. I'm so sorry, but maybe I also don't want to cut you off if you have something to say.
Thank you so much. I just sort of offer a couple of things really quickly in closing. I think that the queer movement here in the Bay Area brings what queer movement does in so many places, which is like an intersectional lived experience that informs an analysis that's beyond binary. And so just gratitude for that always. And thank you everyone for your work and thinking a lot about the connections and gaps and places maybe we will work together in the future.
Thank you for this question. And again, just to again reflect with you, Haneen, about the kind of what I consider a very powerful protest that has taken place only a few months back in the streets of Palestine, where people brought a queer call for freedom to our streets and holding Palestinian flags and bringing all how Palestine is at the heart of the queer struggle. And also it was refreshing to see a lot of groups coming together in that call. A lot of folks working on sexuality, but also kind of refreshing to see a feminist movement now, grassroots movement, that has also taken and put at the heart of its agenda also Palestinian queer struggle, and just the power and beauty of that and that call, and seeing it in the streets was just amazing. And, you know, it's just demonstrates how much the work of Al-Qaws, and also we always say change is slow and can be frustrating for a lot of us, but at the same time, it's quite rewarding to see where Al-Qaws has arrived with its work, and how much people it has managed to mobilize as well, and kind of not just narrow the discussion down in one dimension, but always being more open and inclusive and enabling and of so many intersections to think of the issue in an inclusive and expansive manner rather than limiting. And this is where I take my inspiration from the work of Al-Qaws, but also from the work of so many other individuals, artists, and people who continue to work and inspire us in so many ways. Thank you, and I look forward to answering more questions.
Okay, well, thank you all of you so much. What an honor to listen to each of your talks and presentations. They're all amazing and, you know, very, very thought-provoking, all of them. And I'm very excited that we were able to hold this panel. I think we've reached the end of our panel time today. And I want to just remind people that we begin again tomorrow. We have 2 more panels. Please go to the website to check it out. And maybe some of my co-organizers may have a few words to wrap it up or not.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. Thank you to all the panelists. Please, we will meet tomorrow. You're more than welcome to come. Vous êtes toutes et tous bienvenus, mais n'enregistrez pas, on le fait pour vous parce qu'il y a des problèmes sinon par rapport à la sécurité des gens. Please do not record or take photos. I'm really sorry for people who were kicked out. It was not of our doing. The system is built in such a way that it kicks out people if ever there is a recording or a photograph. So I'm really sorry if people felt offended that they were kicked out and they can't come in. Please remember, this is a place for everyone. As I said at the beginning, c'est pour tout le monde. Ce n'est pas uniquement pour nous. Mais on a aussi besoin de comprendre qu'il y a parfois des problèmes et aussi le souhait des gens qui ne veulent pas qu'ils soient filmés, etc. We also have to understand that this is also about people who do not want to be filmed or photographed. So thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure with this really wonderful, you know, first panel with so much to think of. We'll meet tomorrow. You can also follow us on Twitter. There are people who are tweeting, live tweeting, you know, whatever the panelists are saying. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Soraya, Sylvia, do you want to say anything?
No, only for the Spanish speakers in the room. Le pedimos que por favor no grabaran y bueno, le pedimos disculpa. Todos son bienvenidos y bienvenidas y bienvenides, pero por favor que no graben porque es muy importante para la seguridad y para las personas que están aquí y quizás no quieren que salga una grabación de nuestras pláticas. Así que por favor que no graben en sus dispositivos. Muchísimas gracias y hasta mañana.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. I'm hoping that we can all remain in touch with such a fruitful conversation that we unfortunately have to end it now. And I really mean unfortunately, because honestly, speaking together would seem extremely fruitful. Okay, thank you, everyone. And, you know, all my affection and solidarity to everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
By the way, Haneen and Wala, we Kashmiris love Al-Qaws. Thank you so much for the word. And thank you, everyone. Suraya, Sandeep, and
see you tomorrow, Huma.
yes. I have to go to a wedding tomorrow, a queer wedding.
But that's after the panels, my dear. First, you must come to the panels. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye.